Do what you do well, boy. Do what you do well. There's real wisdom in that song. My mum always used to tell me, do what you do well. If you do that, you'll always be you, and you'll always do well. It used to get paraphrased in my family, do what you do well, for everything else, find somebody else. I never really credited my mum with a huge amount of wisdom, but then she was repeating an old housewives' tale, which is wisdom passed on down through the generations. She was repeating it because somewhere along her life it had started to make sense to her and held up against the test of time, and her mother had done the same and so forth. I quite often like to talk about old housewives' tales because they have real sort of generations of test against them. Do what you do well. There's now a lot of research to show that this is actually the right way forward. There's an awful lot of research to show that if we look at our strengths and our weaknesses, if focus on our weaknesses to try to improve them, put our efforts in there, drag ourselves up, try to level ourselves up, doesn't work. Actually, all the evidence shows that if we put an equal amount of training and time, money and pressure into improving our strengths and our weaknesses, our strengths will improve more. But more importantly, as a percentage, they'll lift our game much more because as a percentage, they contribute a lot more to our success and our results. So there's a big argument out there to say, work on your weaknesses only as much as you have to make sure that your weaknesses aren't a really big weakness for you and dragging you down. Otherwise, put your time into your strengths. Play off those. The message is, focus on your strengths, forget about your weaknesses, you're not going to do anything about them. I don't really hold true to that, and it's a little bit of a depressing statement, but there is some weight in there. Now, this stuff is aimed at doers, at staff mostly, but it holds real meaning for managers. When you get to the management level, you will start to realize that it holds real meaning, and if you haven't, now might be a light bulb moment. So if you're wondering why, here's why. Everybody that you manage will have strengths and weaknesses. And, there's something inside us that wants us to be sort of fair and make sure that everybody has the right opportunities. But you soon learn as a manager that, you'll want to do that, and you'll want to work a little bit to drag somebody up from the weaknesses and certainly give them the opportunity if they haven't really expressed their ability in any one particular area. But most of the time, you'll be leveraging the strengths of those people you know are very strong in that area, because that's where you'll get your most bang for the buck. That's where you'll get your most productivity. Where somebody is weak at one thing and will take a long time to produce a mediocre result, somebody that's strong will do it very quickly, twice as much in the same amount of time, and produce a very good result for you. So knowing the strengths of your staff and playing to those is really important when you become a manager. But actually, there's even a bigger reason why you need to know, do what you do well. For everything else, find somebody else. If you're a new manager, one of the biggest shocks to you was probably the myth of the lazy manager. You probably suddenly realized, my God, I'm having to work hard. I'm having to do so much, and my time is under so much demand. It's different. It's not the hands-on concentrated work that you were doing previously, but it's mentally exhausting and it saps a lot of your time. And one of the things you're having to learn how to do is delegate. You just can't get around and do everything. You need to coordinate and delegate tasks and keep things moving. Your job's a little different now. Those skills are a little different, and doing what you do well becomes really, really important. Not only in making sure that your staff are doing the right things, but also in knowing what to delegate and what to keep for yourself, what to actually action yourself. Now, I know we talk a lot about delegation, and if you're a new manager in particular, you've probably had it drummed into you by the managers above you that if you don't delegate, you're not going to survive, you're not going to be able to get ahead. And yet, you've probably noticed that this rule seems to get broken quite a bit by the really successful managers. And you're probably thinking, how and why and what are the rules here? Well, it may be that your senior managers have just discovered through experience and time and don't know the formula, the actual rule. and have just discovered what it's best to hold close to their chest and work on themselves, and what they should be delegating and getting rid of. And as you mature and get better and better as a manager, one of the things is knowing very clearly about where that line is. Well, I've got some very straightforward block rules that'll show you how to do that. Show you where you should be holding on to it and doing your best because you are the best, and where you should be delegating, finding somebody else. The rule is really simple. If it's not a strength of yours, personally, delegate it. If it is a strength of yours, and particularly if it's strategic to what you're doing, own it. But remember, you don't have to own it to completion. You only have to own it for as long as you can contribute more to moving it forward than anybody else in the team. And you've got to be really careful that ego doesn't come in here. You've got to be really careful that it is about the fact that you're actually better at doing this. Then own it and drive it forward. As soon as you are not the best person, then you shouldn't be owning it. If it's not strategic, then you probably shouldn't be owning it. So 2 simple rules. If you're not good at it, give it to somebody else, delegate. Find somebody that is good at it and let them do what they do well. If you are good at it and it's strategic, do it yourself. But one thing I will say is do it smart. You know, the whole SMART thing. Make sure it's specific and measurable even when you're doing it. Make sure it's time limited and you know when it's going to be delivered, and you know when you're getting into it and when you're getting out of it. Because it's not about your little pet project. It's about moving everything forward because you're the best person to do it, especially if it's strategic. That will also highlight when it's a point in the project to give it to somebody else, because you've achieved the stuff that was really difficult and it needs finishing off perhaps. And just making a point about being a good manager, once you've handed it over to somebody, you've given them ownership of it. And when that thing is a real success, it's their success, right? That's the one thing about being a manager. Remember the mantra, do what you do well, boy, and for everything else, find somebody else.